So there's a couple of things we're trying to get sorted on the viewer side. We think we have the appearance service in the right state, but one of the viewer issues is impeding our ability to actually get it to work the way we think it's supposed to in some cases. So that is still in progress. Anchor's working on it, and we'll get you guys posted once it's out. Sorry that one's dragging on longer than we hoped for. Let's see, what else? Eep is still eeping along. Do we have Ryder here? Ryder, I'm not seeing Ryder. Alright, so to the best of my knowledge, what's going on with Eep is that we still have some graphics issues, and Graham is still working on them, but don't have any particular juicy details there. Let's see. Oh, I see Steel Toe is here. Welcome, Steel Toe. Steel Toe is working on user interface design, UX stuff for Second Life. So he's gotten involved in a lot of discussions recently about how various things are supposed to work. Let's see, I think that may be about it. There was one interesting discussion recently in the forum. I think we've probably covered this in meetings before, but it's the question of what happens if you have a HUD that contains rigged mesh content. And what happens there is kind of unexpected, because normally HUDs get displayed in screen space. They're just like kind of blopped up in your field of view somewhere. But with rigged mesh, just like other rigged content, it winds up getting displayed, against your avatar. So that has a kind of an unexpected consequence, which is that if you have a HUD that contains rigged mesh, and it looks like it's displaying on your avatar, but nobody else can see it. The HUDs only get sent to the owner and not to anybody else. So that's kind of weird, and it can give people pretty unexpected behavior. We're trying to see if we can come up with some way to kind of warn people when that happens, so that they're not getting caught by surprise or inadvertently naked or whatever. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's come up in discussions before, but it's we never actually changed anything for it, so it keeps coming up every so often. Yeah, part of the problem with the rigged HUDs is that at the time that we're attaching them, we don't know that they contain rigged content, so we can't just disable the option or warn people about it. At the time they say they want to attach something, the best we can do is after the attachment shows up, then we can say, oh, hey, wait, this has rigged content, and maybe give people some feedback about that. But anyway, we're talking about that now, trying to see if there's a way that we can situation a little more complicated. So I think that's about it as far as announcements for this week. Anything else that folks want to talk about?
The UI for Animesh shapes was definitely brought up before the meeting itself. There was a lot of discussion about that. Penny Patan brought up some good points.
UI for manipulating Animesh shapes, like a slider panel in the edit window when editing Animesh. Yeah, well, it's still a topic for discussion. The biggest reason not to do it that way is just a question of scope. We have a lot of projects and relatively few people, and I think that if the Animesh thing inflates to a scope that's going to require multiple people for multiple years, then it's probably just not going to happen right now, and we're going to go do other stuff. So it's uh, I'm not sure that having direct slider controls is the kind of thing that we can do in a reasonable sized project, but it's possible. I'm being pessimistic about that, and we discuss it. I think once you got the LSL controls, there should be at least some ability to people to make their own slider controls. Whether or not that offers the best solution, I think it should at least be possible in some. Everybody wants more HUDs. Yeah, yeah, Penny. It's certainly a fair question, and I agree that it would be a better experience if we did have direct slider-based control. It's just a question of what we can fit in the time available. But yeah, at least in terms of the project viewer, we're going to do the LSL-based thing first. Let people play around with. Just that doesn't mean that chip in. That's the.
I mean, surely it'd be easier to find a way to just be able to directly plug in a body shape into Animesh, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the body shape is also something that we're looking at, but it's a little bit of a separate question. I think it turns out that there are things that a body shape is good for, and there's things that having direct control of parameters is good for. A shape is nice for giving you kind of a collected bundle of settings that all get applied together. But if you want to be able to tweak individual aspects on the fly, it isn't super shapes. You'd basically have a shape created for each combination of settings. So I think you could probably make the case that there's going to turn out to be cases where shapes are the way to go, and there's going to Also, regarding the discussion last week about adding new documentation for what the different sliders are, they've added a little more info. There's now a section at the bottom of the document I linked there. There's now a section to describe sliders that affect the collision volumes. So that's things that are used for fitted mesh currently, and could potentially be used in a similar way with Animesh objects. Lucy, I'm not sure if I understand the question about body physics sliders in particular. You mean you want to have documentation about the body physics sliders or something else? Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, you can set any parameter by LSL that you can set for an avatar, right? There's 254 total parameters. If you look in Avatar LAD, it's all the ones that are in group 0 or 3. Those are the ones that actually get messaged to you in an appearance update. So those are all the parameters that you can, in principle, set for an avatar. So that's all the stuff that can be set by shape wearable or your hair wearable or your physics shape or whatever. So there's not any restrictions at all as far as being able to set those parameters by LSL as well. The only limitation is just how well it's documented right now. The physics stuff is kind of odd because the parameters that you can actually send in an appearance message aren't directly connected to the parameters that it looks like actually do the work in the physics rendering. So I think the connection there is actually being made in sort of hard-coded viewer code that's hooking that stuff up, which means that it's hard to figure out exactly what's going on just at the level of sort of parsing through the avatar. But anyway, I want to be very clear that there's not any limitations on that. There's just limitations on how well they're done. So once there's actually a test viewer out there, you're welcome to play around with it and see how that all works out for you. But I think you shouldn't have any issues with setting So yeah, I think the physics stuff should work fine, but we'll see anyway. Bubbling like a Cronenberg movie, that would be an interesting effect. There is going to be a throttle on these things so that you can't use shape manipulation as an animation tool, which also means then we don't have to be sending out updates many times a second for animesh objects. The intent is it gives you similar levels of flexibility to what you can do today with avatars, and of course changing their. Yeah, Lucy, if I ever decipher how the physics stuff works, I'm happy to document it. Right now, it's a little bit of a mystery exactly what's happening. Let's see, Beck asks about bug 202864, change mesh uploader to preserve scene file object names. When a full link set is uploaded. That looks like that's currently in progress. I think that's probably going to be showing up in a main viewer. Pull up the link Jira for that. Okay, so there's some work that's been done on the viewer side, but this also requires a server change to actually get the naming stuff to be respected at upload time. And I think there is, oh yeah, we've also got a Jira filed for the server changes. All right, so yeah, so this is just a matter of you know, waiting for the viewer work to get out in a mate viewer, and then getting time for someone to do the server side work on that, the simulator modifications. So that's what I know about it. Any other questions on that one? Lucy, you said some of the IDs need a non-zero value. How are you determining what the value needs to be for those cases? Yeah. Okay, Lucy, I can take a look at those. The issue is that the default positions of the bones don't necessarily correspond to any particular slider value. What I'm trying to get with the neutral value is sort of the point at which the slider produces a kind of zero level output. You know, there's a sort of 0 to 1 input for the slider that gets mapped into some arbitrary range that's set by the particular slider. So it could be, you know, goes from -2 to 2 or whatever. So for example, if you had a slider where the 0 to 1 gets mapped to -2 to 2, then the neutral value would be 0.5, because that's the point at which the output is going to be, right? It's going to be halfway between 2 and 2. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, depending on the particular slider and what it does, that may or may not give you the same result as actually, you know, leaving the skeleton in its original state. And there may not actually be a slider value that leaves this state. So I'm not really sure the best way to document that. It's, you know, each slider is kind of its own, you know, precious little confusing snowflake, and the neutral value tells you a little bit, but it doesn't. It probably doesn't tell you as much as one would like. If there's anything else that it's useful to document, you know, we can. Maybe the description should be cleaned up a little bit there too. Did we exceed bounds the viewer can't? No, you shouldn't be able to. The sliders should give you the same range of control as you already have through the existing editing tools. The difference is that in the case of Animesh, it's possible to have a skeleton that hasn't had any sliders applied to it at all, whereas with an avatar, basically you always have an appearance that's been baked and a set of, slider values. So the skeleton in the default state. Yeah, so the slider from -2 to 2 is just an example. There's each slider has its own range, and it could be anything potentially. Yeah, for the Jira about avatar cloth, yeah, we brought that in. It's the kind of thing that is, a potential future improvement. We don't have anything currently underway to make, mesh-based clothing flexible, although I know people have done some interesting things with either repurposing bento skeleton bones or even animesh, having like clothing be an animesh attachment. So those are things that do give you one mechanism to kind of tweak the clothing, but they're going to be very labor intensive because they have to supply their own functions to. Just wanting to be able to have sort of physics-like behavior with clothing would would be a very interesting thing to have, but probably a bigger project farther down the line. Lucy, you're saying that some of these sliders don't have a corresponding UI element that's accessible from the avatar shape editing. I think they're probably in there, but they may be called something else. Just a minute, let me go into my own edit shape and see what I see. It's not a good one for this one. Let's see. Change to somebody else. I'll tell you what, I don't want to distract the whole project, but yeah, like I couldn't tell you where all of those. I'm pretty sure that the package slider, for example, is in there. I couldn't tell you all the face sliders, but I suspect that they're in there somewhere, but their names are something else. They've probably got a UI name which doesn't necessarily correspond to the name that's in the Avatar Lab. Yeah, and quite a few of them are morphs. It's the only ones I stuck in that table are ones that also drive some skeleton bones, because those are the only ones that could have an impact on mesh content. But but some of them, there are quite a few sliders that only affect morphs, and for those there really isn't any way to create an equivalent effect for meshes, because morphs aren't really supported. They're a purely avatar only construct. Lucy, the hover height currently works. That is the hover slider in the shape wearable. I'm not sure what those other two do or whether they would have any effect. Those may be morphs. Steeltoe, did you see the question about visual size indicator while editing avatar shape? That's the bug link, just a little ways up there. Polysale mentions that a lot of the sliders work indirectly by affecting other sliders. The table I've got there is attempting to account for that. It's taking all of the sliders that can actually be driven directly by the user and then trying to sort out, what direct and indirect effects that has by other parameters affected by the. So possible that stuff.
No!
Yeah, when we were doing the Bento project, we had to have some tools for crawling through the skeleton and the LAD files just to try to make some sense of what was going on and do some validation. It's not simple. camera controls, there is a project for adding at least some new camera controls. I think it's one of the ones that's just on hold, waiting for somebody to be able to pick it up again. But I'm hoping that won't be too much longer. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not really sure what our policy is on whether the premium status is considered private or not. I'll have to get back to you guys next meeting about that. Yeah, regarding mirrors, my understanding is that they're such a performance killer that they haven't been seriously considered. Something like a 2x slowdown for each mirror in the scene or something. This is a fine form to bring up Arctan, although I don't have anything really new to say about that right now. We're kind of hoping to get Arctan revived in the not too distant future, but it's not being actively worked on right now. If you have any questions about the hypothetical Arctan, though, I'm happy to take a stab at them. Yeah, Penny, that's a challenge, trying to fix the world without breaking anything. question about the difference between uploading anim and BVH files. The difference right now is that there's some optimization that the viewer tries to do with BVH files before it uploads them. So it tries to make changes that will make the animation smaller, without having a large impact on the observable behavior of the animation. Basically trying to sort of filter out small changes. It's not clear how great a job it does with that, so it's definitely possible that you're going to see slightly different results with a BVH upload versus an anim upload. And given that anim is available, it may not make much sense the way we're doing it now. It's whatever optimizations we're applying should probably be done distantly or not at all, rather. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions about how any changes to land impact formulas would work. I think when materials came out, it was kind of a new formula that was applied to newly modified items, so that old items wouldn't have their LI bumped up. But if you wanted to opt into the material system, then you were also effectively so that's the kind of thing that could potentially happen, but definite decision. Yeah, polysale. I think it's probably a 2-byte index for the individual pieces, so it would be 65536 or 5 or whatever that is. But yeah, then you can have lots of pieces put together to make a mesh with a heck of a lot of polys and. Yeah, regarding the script overload issue, I know that's something that's being worked on. I don't think the intent is to have this always be overloaded on script time, but if that's the current behavior, I can see that would not be good. I guess if we're, if we completely wash out on getting it fixed, we might try to find ways to make it degrade more gracefully, but I think the hope is that we can actually solve the problem. How are you working around it now? Just trying not to use pathfinding?
Looking into not using pathfinding, or rather just using LL get static path and then trying to tweak around the places where that doesn't work, do the right thing. Beck and Elizabeth saw me playing with this yesterday.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of no fun having to deal with that.
It's frustrating because it actually works halfway decently. Um, if there's always spare time on the sim and 100% of pathfinding steps are being executed. The way pathfinding seems to work is that it has a plan that says, okay, move in this direction at a certain velocity until notified otherwise. And if the next update with the next steering correction comes in late, things go rapidly downhill from there.
So this is a relatively new problem that's come on with changes in how loaded the sims are getting. It's not something you've been seeing all along.
Well, what I'm hearing now is about half of all sims are in script overload. I assume you at Linden Labs have stats on this.
I'm sure we do. I haven't been working on that area recently, but I can poke around.
There are a number of things that stop working under overload. One of them is scripts which pass messages to other scripts. Those get delayed and the message loss rate goes up. Certain types of helicopters become unflyable in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, all I know at this point, I think, is that Ryder is working on it. But if we get to the point where we really can't fix it, then trying to make pathfinding behavior sort of default something more reasonable might be, kind of a fallback.
Yeah, you know what I have to say, so I've said it.
Let's see. I'm looking at Diamond's bug here, 8801. So that's going back a ways. This is from 2015. Has anything changed with it recently, or this is just a kind of an ongoing issue? And it's only on Mac and Linux, you said? Alright, yeah, Linux isn't really very actively supported at this point, but if it repros consistently on Mac, then it's definitely something we could take a look at. Trying to see what the current status is. It's been cloned. Alright, there's some notes about looking into this that I need to parse through, but it looks like there's been at least some action on it within the last few months. Okay, Diamond, let me take a look at what we have on this, and I should be able to give more details next meeting. Alright, well, I guess we're about at time here. So, guess I'll see everybody next week. Try to get answers for a couple of things that came up this week. Then, and still hoping to get fakes on mesh sorted and out, but we will keep you posted.
Awesome. Thanks, Vir.
Okay, bye everybody.